Ron, I want to ask you about the Chelsea team that actually played in that cup final. Starting with the goalkeeper, of course, Peter Bonetti. When did Peter actually come to the club?
He come to Chelsea, in 1957, 56, 57. And, I think was a tremendous goalkeeper. A lot of people remember him for the mistake he made, which I'm sure he'll tell you, against Germany in the World Cup. But as I say, he served Chelsea for 15 years, played, I think, about 700 games for Chelsea. And he was one of the fittest fellas I've ever seen. He used to win cross countries, he would win the sprints and things like that. And as I say, the supporter, well, his nickname was the Cat.
Yes, you said there he won international caps. I think it was about 7 in all, Peter won. And you said about the World Cup game, which was unfortunate as far as I'm concerned. I remember that situation as well. And it's unfortunate that he got tarnished because he was a really good goalkeeper.
Yeah, I think he was a little bit unfortunate that he was thrust upon him at the very last minute. And I think he would have played, if it hadn't been for Gordon Banks being on as the #1 keeper, I think Peter would have played a lot more games if Gordon Banks hadn't have been around.
There was a time during Peter's career that he left to be a postman in the Isle of Mull, I understand?
That's right. When he finished from football, he moved up to Scotland for a few years, but I don't think that lasted too long. And he come back, and I think he went to Chelsea as a goalkeeping coach, and he's been to a few clubs recently, and that's what he does for a living.
He was actually at Chelsea when I came back in 83, 84 as a goalkeeping coach, and he helped to groom a very successful goalkeeper in Eddie Niedzweski, and a very good coach indeed. I think he actually coached for England as well, did he not?
Yes, he. I think when he used to be with Dave Sexton when they used to take the under-21s, I think he was involved when Kevin Keegan was manager at England, and the only thing Peter couldn't do was kick a ball.
Is he still in coaching, do you know?
Yes, he's at Manchester City with Kevin Keegan, doing the goalkeeping coaches up there, so he's still involved.
Well, certainly that's a testament to his agility and his fitness, because he must be what age now?
He must be, 61, Peter? 62?
It's brilliant. We've got a great picture here from you, Ron, with the great Stanley Matthews and Terry Venables in the background. What was Matthews like to play against, and how old was he?
Well, he was 49 years of age then, Stan, and I'd just come into the side as a 17-year-old lad. It was his farewell appearance in London, and I think it was about the first time I ever really got some stick from the Chelsea supporters, because he did play on the fact that it was his farewell appearance, and he was still exceptionally quick over the first 20 yards, and as I say, at 49 years of age, he was still a very, very useful player.
The Bosman ruling, of course, has come in now, and you're currently the record holder at Chelsea for appearances. Why do you think players won't stay so loyal these days?
Well, I think obviously, most of these players today have got agents, and I think agents are phoning people around and saying, so-and-so can be available at certain times, and it's like everything else that, I'm proud of the fact that I played all those games, and I think it will be a long, long time before the record is broken the way football is at the moment, because it just seems to be the in thing that the players stay at a club for 4 or 5 years and then look to go elsewhere, and obviously it might be a little bit more difficult nowadays because it looks as though the bubbles burst with the wages, so it's going to be interesting to see what does happen.
It was 795 the actual games you played for Chelsea in 19 years.
I went there in 1959 and finished in 1981, and I do, like you've just mentioned, the number of games I played, and I do get a little bit disappointed because they never tell you the number of goals I scored.
And they were
13.
What? 13, there you go. You touched on there the fact that players don't stay loyal. Do you think it's because of the large amounts of money that's in the game at the moment? What sort of wages were you getting then as compared to what they're getting now?
The highest wage I got at Chelsea was £295 a week, which I think was a lot of money then. But we used to get like £100 a point when you got 2 points for a win. And I know when the old buzzer used to go, when the referees used to buzz, the lads would turn around and say, come and look, there's another week's wages to be earned here, and I think that was a tremendous incentive. And I do question some of the players that are playing today that are on 30, 40 grand a week, and maybe a basic wage, that whether they have got the will to want to win and run through a brick wall to get hurt,
Yeah. You played under 9 different managers, I think, in that period. Who were the better ones, and what were some of their strengths and weaknesses?
Well, Tommy Dock was the first one that I worked under at Chelsea, and Tom, I've got a great respect for, because I think he changed the club inside out at Chelsea. They had a lot of old fellas at Deadwood, and wherever Tom's managed, he's always brought in youngsters, because his philosophy was that youngsters never cheat. And he brought some terrific youth players through. He was a great motivator of players, not a particularly good coach, because I think years ago when we first started playing, the coach, people most probably thought was a coach driver, because nobody really coached you. You just done 2 warming up laps and played 6-a-side and 7-sides and went from there. But no, I've got the great respect for Tom, and he was a very, very funny man.
Any more?
Dave Sexton, I used to enjoy working with. I think Dave was a tremendous coach. I think he was a little bit fortunate to inherit some good players that were just beginning to come to their prime at Chelsea. And
Dave, of course, managed this cup final side.
Yeah, Dave managed the side in the 70 Cup final and the 71 European Cup Winners' Cup. And I think if Dave would have been in the present day setups today, where you've just got a coach to coach the players and not worry about anything else, I think he would have most probably still been earning a living, because he was a good coach, had some good ideas, and as I say, it was an joy to work with him.
Ron, 795 games, which is fantastic. What was it like when you actually pulled the shirt on for the last time, and where was it?
It was a home game against Notts County, when Jeff Hurst was manager at the time, and Chelsea were in the 2nd division then, and I think we finished up winning 1-0 or 4-1. I can't remember, it's such a long time ago, but it did, when the game finished and all the crowd started chanting your name, and I did go up into the director's box and took my shirt off and threw it over to the crowd, and it did bring a bit of a lump in my throat, because I knew that I was going to go to Brentford coaching, or player coach, and although they did ask me to stay for another year, Jeff Hurst, but I must be truthful, he wasn't one of my flavour of the month managers, and he never lasted too long there anyway, and I decided to take the plunge into coaching.
You were captain of the cup final side, and did any of the players needed barking at or shouting at for any particular reason?
No, I think that, like I'm sure the lads will tell you, there was some fellas that you could, have a bit of a ruck at to try and get a little bit more from. Some lads that you used to have to mollycoddle a little bit to get a little bit more, or if you had a bit of a pop too much, they would.
Anyone's in particular?
Well, I think Charlie Cook was a lad that, as much as he was a very, very skillful player, I think if people used to have a pop at Charlie, he could easily drop his head a bit. So, whereas if you had somebody like Oz that was playing, that you could call a few names under the sun, he would, most probably relish it a bit more, and he needed to be, pushed along a little bit.
What about any rituals or pre-match routines that players go through, or any talismans that was about? Was there any of that? Did any player have any particular one that you?
Yeah, Webby had a spell where that he used to sit in a corner with a towel over his head to meditate. I think he'd done it before the cup final against Leeds, but it never done him any good. But he soon knocked that on the head. Some people used to want to be the last one out, and some people would be the last one to put their shorts on and things like. Some would go to the toilet and have a fag and things like that, which I'm sure even in your time people would do certain things.
You mentioned you left Chelsea and went to coach at Brentford. How long did that last, and how long did you stay in football after that?
I went to Brentford with Freddie Callaghan. He used to be at Fulham. I was there for just over 3 years, and parted company. Then decided to maybe go into a business. But before that, I had the opportunity of going to Aldershot Football Club for, there was a lot of backroom politics, and I was there for about a season before they reverted back to the manager that was left there before. There was a completely new board of directors that were outed out. They got back in power and they reverted back to the manager they had previously. And you know, a couple of years after that, we decided as a family to go into business, and we bought a golf club down at Swindon. We had that for about 6 or 7 years, and then moved into Warminster, where we are at the moment.
Do you miss football, and do you still manage to keep any contact at all with anyone, or do you have much involvement in the modern game?
I go over to Jersey to coach the football for the island side over there, which is which is quite good. It's a nice place to go to, and very, very keen lads, and that's my only involvement in football at the moment.
Brings me on to David Webb, at the heart of the centre of defence there. David, of course, remembered for his cup final goal. Great Chelsea memory that was itself. He had an illustrious career, David, but where did he come from? How did he get to Chelsea? I mean, where was he playing before that?
Well, I think he started off at Leighton Orient, and he went from there to Southampton. And Chelsea done a swap deal when Dave Sexton was manager. We had a lad called Joe Kirkup that used to be at West Ham and come to Chelsea, and they done a player swap. And Webby was what should I say? He wasn't the most gifted of players, but very, very enthusiastic. A big lad. Used to score some vital goals from set plays and things like that. And as I say, he was a useful player to have in your side because, as I say, he was a 6-foot fella and a tremendous competitor.
What was his real strengths? What was his strengths and what was his weaknesses? I mean, he played centre half, and he appeared to me when I saw him to be fearless and attack the ball well.
Well, as I say, he was a tremendous competitor. He used to, sometimes he would play right back, sometimes he'd play alongside the centre half, and he wasn't the quickest of fellas. I think he was about the only fellow I could beat over 5 yards, and was good in the dressing room. Used to get involved in the old banter, and it was one of the lads. And as I say, every now and again when we was looking to nick a goal, he'd have a spell up front as a centre forward, and I remember him scoring 3 goals as a centre forward up at Ipswich one year, and then he used to get a little bit carried away with himself, where he used to try and chest the ball down and sell dummies, which he wasn't capable of doing. But as I say, he was a straight, honest guy that done an honest day's work for Dave Sexton.
When David left Chelsea, he went to play for Queen's Park Rangers. I think he played about 100 games or so for them, and had spells at Leicester, Derby and Bournemouth, I believe he finished. But then he made his name a bit as a coach later on. Did he come across to you as a natural coach? No,
not really. I was quite surprised that Webby went into coaching and the management, because to me he seemed the last person I would have thought out of all the lads that would have been interested in coaching and taking up the management.
Didn't he also play in goal, I remember, on one occasion?
Yeah, he played one day that was a funny situation actually, because Pete Benetti had cried off injured, and we had a lad called John Phillips that went down with a flu overnight, and the only other lad we had was a lad called Stevie Sherwood, and he'd gone home for the Christmas period, and they tried to contact him, and they rushed him down, or he drove down to get to the game on time, but it was against Ipswich at the time, and Bobby Robson was the manager, and you used to have to put in a team sheet half an hour beforehand, and like he wouldn't let, because Stevie Sherwood hadn't arrived yet, he was adamant that if he come a little bit later, he wouldn't allow him to play. So Webby went in goal, and we finished up, we won 2-0 actually, and he kept a clean sheet, Webby. But he was quite useful actually, because he was a big fella and a bit of a scatterbrain at times, which goalkeepers are, aren't they? But he done all right on it. A couple of times he went in goal when, say, like Pete Benetti got injured, and I think he played in a cup tie one day when he got injured. So yeah, he was all right actually in goal, Webby.
While he was coaching and in management, he had quite a few spells at Southend, I think 3 times, but he ended up back at Chelsea in '93. What happened there?
Well, I think Webby done ever so well when he went to manage Chelsea, and I think at the time they were heading for relegation, and he seemed to have stopped the rot. But I think most footballers, or the rumour that was going round at the time, that he was only a stopgap for Glenn Hoddle that was leaving Swindon, and come near the end of the season, they parted company and Glenn Hoddle took over. But I thought he'd done a good job at Chelsea, Webby.
And then I think he moved on to Brentford. It was his next club as a manager, and stayed there 4 years. Yeah,
he was there a few years, Webby, with I think Martin Lange was the chairman at Brentford at the time, and I think he'd done reasonably well, wherever he's been. He's always seemed to have done well in management.
What's he doing now?
From what I gather from different people you've talked to, since he's resigned from Southend through ill health, I think he's got his fingers in a few little business ventures, so that's about the last I heard of Webby.
John Dempsey, the other centre-back in this cup winning side, was signed from Fulham. Did he make an immediate impact when he came?
Demps was, I think, one of the worst trainers I've ever seen at Chelsea, but I think he was a very, very underestimated player. He played the way he was faced. He was no fancy dance. If he was facing the stand, he'd kick the ball in the stand. And there were some big centre forwards around in those times, likes of Ron Davis and Wyn Davis, and I don't think I've ever seen Demps lose a ball in a heading duel, because, as I say, he was a good lad. Used to go up for set plays similar to Webby, and used to nick a goal here and there. And as I say, I think he was a very underestimated player.
Was he a prolific goal scorer as centre halves go?
No, not really. But as I say, his appearance up front used to, when we used to send the big lads up and we had 4, 5, 6 footers in the side, used to cause a few problems for opposing teams.
As he did in Europe?
Yes, he scored, I'm sure Demps will say that it was one of the best goals he's ever scored in the replay against Real Madrid. He hit a volley from just outside the box, I think, and it was an unbelievable strike right in the top corner.
Did he win any international caps?
Yeah, I think Demps played in a few dozen games for Era, but he was one of these lads that got in through the back door. He come from Hendon originally, and through one of his great-grandfathers managed to get in the Era set up.
What did he do when he left Chelsea?
I believe he had a spell out in America, because the in-place for lads that were coming to the end of their career over here was taking the opportunity of playing in America, and I believe he went to Philadelphia Furies for about 3 or 4 seasons, and then went on to manage a side in Ireland, and he's back in Barnet at the moment as a PE teacher.
Your fullback partner, Eddie McCready, he was the opposite on the left-hand side for you. Was he your ideal partner? As fullbacks go, you say about one going, one holding. Did Eddie tend to get forward more than yourself?
Yeah, Eddie was a fit fella, for somebody that used to smoke like a trooper. He had 2 good feet, very, very quick, was blind as a bat, but very, very enthusiastic. Used to put some stick around when it got a little bit tough, and went on to manage Chelsea when he finished playing.
Eddie, of course, was voted recently in an all-time poll of one of Chelsea's greatest ever players. Yeah,
I would have thought so, because I've always included in the sides that I've been asked to pick at Chelsea as a left-back, because, as I say, there wasn't many wingers could beat him for pace. He could kick with 2 good feet, and certain times if I was getting a bit of a rough time playing right back, maybe we would swap over, and I'd move to left back and he would move to right back, and we was just as comfortable doing that.
What did he do when he left Chelsea?
He went over to America to manage a side in Memphis. I think he stayed over there for quite some time, and I think he runs a business over there at the moment, and he's been over there. I haven't seen Eddie for the best part of 30 odd years.
It was a decorating business, I understand.
So I gather, yes, yeah.
You played under Eddie as a manager as well. What was his strengths and weaknesses as a manager?
Eddie was, like Tommy Docherty signed Eddie McCready for me, Sterling, and Eddie had a lot of Tom's ideas. He brought in lots of youngsters, got rid of one or two of the older players, and very, very enthusiastic. But I always think it was sometimes it's a little bit difficult when you've been a player to at Chelsea or any other club, and you leave as a player and take on the reins as a manager. I think it's always a little bit difficult making decisions, or I'm sure in your time you mix with some players a lot more than you do others, and he was very, very enthusiastic. I think he got the side promotion, but I think he got a little bit, or the story goes that his demands at the time, Chelsea were going through a bit of a rough patch financially, and he demanded a few things which the board weren't happy with, and he confronted them and turned around and said, well, if I don't get this, I will resign, and they accepted his resignation, and they tell me that a few days after that he asked to get the job back and they refused.
We move on to the midfield, Ron, and I know you have one or two difficulties as to who actually played out on the right in that particular side. But Charlie Cook, we're going to start with. He came down from Aberdeen. How would you describe his strengths and weaknesses?
Tommy Docherty signed Charlie for something like 72 grand, and Charlie was a superb, skillful player, more of an individualist rather than a team player, but he used to entertain the lads in the dressing room with his juggling skills and things like that. And the first game he ever played in at Chelsea, he scored a fantastic goal against West Ham. I think we won 2-0 the opening of the season, and he could do some fantastic things with a football, and I think he was one of the most gifted players that I've ever seen, at Chelsea.
Some people say that if George Best wasn't around, Charlie Cook would have got a lot more plaudits and a lot more acclaim. Was he really that good?
I think so. The only thing that I think Charlie lacked was that he never used to score many goals. He used to get in some good positions, but maybe pass the ball on to somebody else. But Charlie was a crowd pleaser. That the bigger the game, the better he would perform, and he was the one that done the little David Beckham cross for us that scored in the cup final at Old Trafford.
Yes, he had two spells at Chelsea, of course, with I think a few games for Crystal Palace in between. Where did he go after Chelsea?
When he left Chelsea, he's been out in America now for must have been 30 odd years, and the last time I see Charlie must have been 2 years ago. He runs a coaching for the kids over in America, and he's supposed to be very highly successful and highly thought of.
This curve of coaching, Ron, what do you know about it?
Well, obviously Charlie's involved over in America, and some of the tricks that you see Johan Cruyff used to do, and Pele, he teaches these kids to do these sort of tricks, and I would imagine, knowing what a skillful player Charlie was, he does that very successfully.
Brings me on to the midfield, Ron. In a more central role was John Hollins. John had 2 spells at Chelsea, and he appealed to me as someone who was a natural winner.
Yeah, John was a tremendous competitor, very fit lad, that's a good trainer, that could run from the first minute to the 90th minute. A very, very bubbling, enthusiastic player in the dressing room and out on the pitch, and I think served Chelsea tremendously well.
I think he holds the record of 167 consecutive games for Chelsea.
Yes, I know he had a fantastic spell where he never got injured, but I think one of his it wasn't his strongest point, was tackling, so perhaps that's why he played all them many games.
Yeah, John left. He left Chelsea and, of course, went to play with Arsenal, and he returned to Chelsea in '83 after winning a lot of trophies. In '83, he was a coach at Chelsea. It wasn't a very successful spell, but as a coach, it was. After moving into management, John struggled a little bit.
Yeah, I was surprised that you know, he went back, I think, when John Neal was the manager at Chelsea. He was, they had like John Neal, Ian McNeil and Johnny Hollins, and you know, I was surprised that he went back there, you know, to do the coaching, and obviously finished up as a manager. You know, I don't think with too much success.
But the fact he cut his teeth there, it enabled John to be more successful later on in his time at Swansea. I'm sure John used to say that he'd made one or two mistakes, but he did learn from them, and everyone's got to learn somewhere.
Well, obviously everybody, you know, you live or die by the mistakes you make, and obviously when he left Chelsea, he was out of football for a few years, and I was quite surprised that he went from Chelsea to Swansea. You know, and then he went from Swansea back to Rochdale, and you know, parted company, I think, at the back end of last season, and I think that he does a lot of media work for the radio and the television now. Like.
Yes, as well as a management business, I understand he has.
Well, he used to do that when he left Chelsea, run a management company, but you know, I don't know whether he's still doing that as well, but obviously he's not involved in football at the moment.
Tommy Baldwin comes into the central midfield role, and sometimes he played on the right, but he arrived at Chelsea via Arsenal with a certain George Graham going in the other direction.
Yes, you know, Tommy Dockett was manager at the time. They done a straight swap. George Graham went to the Arsenal, and Tommy Baldwin come to Chelsea, and you know, the first game that Tommy played in was against Manchester City, where he ran I think the fella called George Heslop ran him ragged, and I think we finished up winning 3 or 4-0, and I think Tom did score. I know he definitely scored 1 goal, but it could have been 2. And but Tom, you know, from my point of view as a defender, you know, you could play balls down the channels and things like that. He had a good touch. He had the knack of backing into centre halves, but it was always a bit unfortunate, Tom, because he had a spell where he'd score a few goals in a short period of time, but as soon as the goals dried up, he was the one that seemed to be left out the side. And then when, you know, Tommy Docherty left and Dave Sexton come down, you know, Tom used to find we had a problem out on the right wing, and Tom used to find himself playing more games playing out wide than maybe what his best position. I think his best position was playing up front as a target man.
You actually mentioned that sometimes Tom was asked to play different roles. What role did Dave Sexton give him in the cup final?
Well, Tom played in both the games out wide on the right, and he, you know, I think with Terry Cooper was playing left back at the time, and he was always good at going on forward runs and things like that. And I think Tom, you know, prime job was to make it a little bit difficult for Terry Cooper doing these runs. But when it come to the replay, and I played right back and Tom played in front of me, he was a big asset for me, having to look after Eddie Gray, and he would come back and double up in me, and I think we'd done that quite successful. But you know, I think the best spell that Tom had, where he scored quite a lot of goals, was with some of my off-the-ball runs and things like that used to get him in good positions.
Tommy played in 2 FA Cup finals for the club during his period there, which was quite some achievement in the days when certainly clubs didn't dominate as much as they do now.
Yeah, Tommy played in 4 actually, because he played in the League Cup final against Stoke, and also the Cup Winners' Cup in Athens against Real Madrid. So I think he's one an elite band at Chelsea that have played in 4 finals.
When he left Chelsea, well, certainly towards the end of his Chelsea career, he was loaned out to Millwall and Manchester United. Did his career end there?
No, I think he went on to play in America, in Seattle Sounders for a spell, before he come back over and coached at Brentford.
Do you know what he's doing now?
I think he does a bit of hospitality work at Chelsea every now and again, and does golfing days. So I think that's what he's doing at the moment.
The final part of the midfield jigsaw, Peter Houseman, who was so tragically killed in '77. What was he like as a player?
I think Nobby, we used to call him Nobby, I think was a very, very underestimated player. I think he was a very skillful lad, tremendous left foot, and I don't think he really got the recognition he deserved, because the Chelsea supporters used to moan and groan at certain times with him, but you know, he played with me, or in front of me, for quite some time, and as I say, I think he was a fit lad, good trainer, very, very quiet off the field, and I thought that one of the best games I've ever seen Peter play was in the semi-final against Watford, where I think he scored 2 goals, and the other 3 goals come from his crosses, like, you know. And as I say, he was a good lad, no problems. I'm sure he was a manager's dream to look after. Like,
what was he like in the dressing room?
It was very, very quiet. You know, the only time that he used to say a lot is if we went away and the lads used to slip him a few drinks, and he used to get a little bit, say, leery when he had a few, like. But other than that, he was a very, very quiet lad.
Which player had the closest bond with him?
Well, I think one of his pals at Chelsea was Peter Benetti and Johnny Hollins. They used to team up together if we went away, you know, on a club tour or anything like that. You'd get, you know, if there were 16 lads in the party, you'd always get like Pete Benetti, Johnny Hollins and Peter Assman go their way, and the other 12 lads would, you know, be uptown, sort of thing.
He had some involvement in a boys' club, and would he have been a natural manager or coach, because considering he had the role he took up the role in the boys' club in Oakley?
Well, I think he ran a boys' club, or he was involved in a boys' club at Basingstoke, where he come from, and yeah, I think Nobby would have been quite a good lad to become a coach, or I don't say as a manager, because I think he was very, very quiet, but I think as a coach he had all those, what shall I say, achievements to want to become a coach.
What would you say would be his single greatest contribution to Chelsea?
He was a very, very fit lad, and from the first minute to the 90th minute, he could graft. He used to close people down when he played in front of me, and I've always said to people that he made my job a lot easier than what it was, because if a winger was taking me on, he'd be the first one in there trying to get in a tackle and hustling and bustling people, and I just used to pick up the pieces. He used to do a lot of my running anyway, but you know, he was a very fit lad and a good trainer.
Brings me on to the forward line, the famed partnership, if you like, of Ian Hutchinson and Peter Osgood. We'll start with Hutch. He signed from Burton Albion, Hutch. Can you remember when he first came?
Yeah, when he first came down to Chelsea, he looked a terrible, terrible player. You couldn't believe that whoever, you know, I think they only give a £5,000 or £6,000 wasn't, you know, a great deal of money, and you know, I think the lads used to laugh watching him try to trap a ball and things like that. He looked the worst pro that I've ever seen. But to give the lad credit, maybe because he come into a side that had some good players, he worked hard at his game, and he developed a fantastic understanding with Peter Osgood, because Hutch was the sort of lad that wasn't afraid of anybody, you know, and as you well know, defenders always like to get in first, and you know, some of the forwards you marked was a little bit milky, and you could put them in your pocket after 5 minutes. But Hutch was the sort of lad that, you know, the tougher the game, the tougher he would get, and he was a bit unfortunate because he had a lot of injuries when he was at Chelsea. But he used to, I think he was the first one that used to throw the long balls, and when you had the few big lads that we had, it was like getting a corner or free kick every time we had a throw in. And as I say, he was a big, brave lad, looked after himself, and they had I think 1 year, him and Oz scored something like 58 goals between them.
How did that partnership develop?
Well, I think when Hutch first come down, I think he used to play as a fullback, and we had a practice game one day, and they moved him up front, and it just clicked like that, because Oz was the skillful partner, and Hutch was the battering ram sort of thing. He used to upset central defenders or centre halves in those days, and Oz would feed off of him, and as I say, they had a fantastic understanding together.
Which brings me on to the final piece of the jigsaw, of course, Peter Osgood. Was Chelsea Ozzy's first club?
Yes, I think he his uncle wrote in for a trial, and he came to Chelsea at the age of about 17. And within no time, everybody started to talk what a tremendous prospect he was, and he went on from there. And I think Oz was one of the most gifted players that's in my time that's ever put on a blue shirt for Chelsea. And he was a big lad, 6'2", scored some fantastic goals. Could look after himself. If he got a little bit tough, he could handle himself. And as I say, very, very skillful lad. Wasn't the best of trainers. I'm sure he'd tell you that himself, but he done ever so well, because as a youngster, I remember him breaking his leg up at Blackpool against Blackpool in a League Cup tie. I think Emily Hughes done a tackle on it, broke his leg, and he was out of football for a long time. But he managed to get back into it, and as I say, scored some fantastic goals for Chelsea.
Did he win many international caps?
Well, I think it was a bit of a joke, really, that he only played 3 or 4 games, for England. And but then when you look at some of the lads that were around at the time, like Bowlesy, Marshy, Mick Shannon, Jeff Hurst, and Bobby Charlton, you can understand why he only played 4 games.
He holds this unique record of scoring in every FA Cup round. Is that correct?
Yes, I think he'll tell you himself that he's the one Chelsea player that's ever done this, and by scoring a goal in every round of the cup.
When Peter left Chelsea, of course, he went down to Southampton, where he was, I wouldn't say lucky enough, but he starred in another FA Cup final.
Yes, Oz went down there, I think when Laurie McMenemy was manager, and against all the odds, they beat Manchester United in the cup final, and was played part of the cup final, and as I say, put on a superb display, I think, with Mick Shannon, and I think Bobby Stokes, Jim McCalliog, and done ever so well for himself even when he left Chelsea.
Yes, I think then he moved on to Norwich and finally decided to try his luck in the States.
Yeah, he was another one at the time, went to the States, he had a spell over there. I think the unfortunate part from Ozzy's point of view is that he come back to Chelsea, and when I think Ken Shelliter was manager at the time, brought him back, and his legs had gone by then, Oz, and I think everybody had expected him to be like he was a few years ago, and that never happened, and he stayed there for a short period, but never on his second appearance back at Chelsea, I think he only played a handful of games.
After that spell, was that the end in football for Ozzy?
Yes, I think he went into, well, it wasn't really, because he went into business with Ian Hutchinson at a pub, and then he had a spell as a youth team manager under Alan Ball at Portsmouth. And since he's come out of football, he, up until recently, done the hospitality at Chelsea, does the after dinner circuit, and does a lot of golfing, corporate golfing days down at Southampton. So that's what he's doing for a living at the moment.
And finally, Ron, to Marvin Hinton, who made 2 substitutes appearances in both cup finals. What did Chelsea like about Marvin's style of play that made them sign him from Charlton?
Well, Tommy Docherty signed him from Charlton for, I think it was about 35 grand, and Marvin was at the time, was one of these centre halves that wasn't an aggressive player. He wasn't a big 6'2" dominating centre half. He was more like a sweeper, and he had the skill of an inside forward. And I think it was one of the best buys that Tommy Docherty had ever done, and it was a real lazy son, so off the field in training and done enough to get by of a Saturday, but he was a superb player, and as I say, I think he would have been an ideal player to play in the present day system when people play three central defenders, and he's looking to be the so-called mopper-upper.
Yes, he made an appearance twice. He came on for you in the first game, I understand.
Yes, he come on for me in the first game, and I believe he was the first time he was the first sub ever in a cup final, and he come on in the replay for Peter Osgood in the last few minutes at Old Trafford.
Did he win any international caps?
No, he got For the 1966 World Cup, they invited 40 players to start with. I think, well, I know Marvin was in the 40, but when it was whittled down to the final 22, he missed out.
What did Marvin do when he left Chelsea, Ron?
When he left Chelsea, he had a spell for 2 or 3 years at Barnet, and then from there he went to Crawley, where he's always lived, and I think from there he played a hatful of games for Horsham at the age of 46.
What made him go into retirement at what is obviously not an early age, but considering his fitness, one would think he would continue to play as long as he could?
Well, he was involved in a car accident where I believe he broke his leg and both his ankles, and I'm sure if that hadn't have happened, he'd have still been playing today.
Well, Tom Allen, we're actually going to do something which I'm sure every Chelsea fan has done, have wanted to do for years. We're going to ask you two lads to pick your all-time Chelsea 11 from 1965 to 2002, and you can't pick yourselves. So we'll start with the goalkeeper, if you don't mind, and there's quite a few to choose from in that period. Who have you got down for your all-time Chelsea goalkeeper, Tom?
Oh, I've got Peter Bonetti. He has to be, doesn't he?
For what reason?
For what reason? He's the best goalkeeper Chelsea have ever had. Until he played in the World Cup and they blamed him for that goal, he never put a foot wrong, ever. We used to say to him, he didn't like crosses. But, called him Dracula, don't like crosses. But he was good at it. You watched that 70 Cup final, and he got everything in every cross he was out there for. He's punched it, caught it. And I just can't see anyone else. Who you got there? Peter Barotta?
What about you, Al?
Well, without being biased, but Tommy's right. I don't only think that he's the best Chelsea goalie ever. Apart from Gordon Banks and Pat Jennings, he'd be up there with all of them. I mean, one of the greatest of all time. Tommy says, they say about crosses and that, it wasn't so much his crosses and everything else. He defied his size because there was nothing of him. He was fit as a fiddle. It was his agility. I remember one of my first games for Chelsea at Old Trafford, and it was a big occasion for a young kid. And I stood behind Bobby Charlton as he let one go at the top corner where he goes for, and I thought, here we are, we're 1-0 down. But Catty come from nowhere, and I see him do that so many times that he can only be the best goalkeeper.
Did you consider any other goalkeeper?
No,
or was it just
without a doubt.
one decision?
Bonetti,
I mean, Eddie
let me tell you.
Niedzwiecki played when I was there, and Eddie was, I'm not going to say any better than Peter, but certainly his career was cut short through an injury. But at the time he was there, the 2 or 3 years that Eddie actually played, he produced some fantastic performances. And I just wonder, in your opinion, what sets Peter Bonetti out from all the other candidates?
Well, I think Peter greatness to me, I thought he was one of the greatest goalkeepers. He was second to Gordon Banks. I think Gordon Banks was the best goalkeeper. But Peter was up there with him. I tell you what, in training, he wouldn't let a ball go past him. You know, he's in training. We used to have shots at him, just practice knocking balls in.
Mind you, we were all drunk when we were shooting.
But he would not. He was diving all over the place. This is just in training, and he would not let you
All
score.
the great goalkeepers do that sort of thing, and that, I think I actually agree with you. I'd have actually put Peter Bonetti in, but Eddie Nizveski, of course, was a great keeper for me as well.
We must not leave that as well, although it won't take long. When Catty was injured, John Phillips came in and did a job for Chelsea, and he possibly could have won us the European Cup Winners' Cup, because he played a game in Bruges. We played out there, and Peter Bonetti, Gordon Banks, whatever, John Phillips was out of this world, and we come back the bridge 2-0 down, and we end up winning on aggregate. But he was a wonderful goalkeeper.
So we're all agreed then, Peter Bonetti is Chelsea's all-time greatest goalkeeper.
Yeah,
Definitely, for me.
For the purposes of this exercise, chaps, we're going to play it in a 4-4-2 formation, which brings us to a right-back position. Have you any outright views, Alan? Is it an easy choice at right-back as it was as a goalkeeper for you?
Not really. I think Peter Bonetti, and we'll come on to one later on, that just win hands down. But I think Ron Harris can't be left out of whether he's right back, playing in the middle, or playing left back. He's, he's a legend. He's a player that not many players over all these years have wanted to play against, including Jimmy Greaves and George Best. Ron Harris, he just has to be in that back four.
Of course, he holds the record as well for Chelsea appearances, 795.
Yeah. That's because he never got injured, but the 795 players he played against all got injured.
What about you, Tom?
I'll pick Ron Harris as well. Because Ronnie, you have to have him in the team, don't you? I nicknamed him the Assassin years ago. And he was. If they've got a player in their team, like your Jimmy Greaves, George Best, they don't get a kick of the ball. Ronnie's with them for 90 minutes, and I think George Best had one good game. Well, he scored one goal against us.
Yeah, one great goal. One great goal.
And Ronnie's the best marker of marking someone out of the game. He can just take them out of the game. He marks them for 90 minutes, and they don't do a thing.
What about the merits of some of the other people who played in that position? Steve Clark, 10 years at Chelsea. Mario Melchiot, current position holder.
Afraid not.
No, well, Ronnie's got he's got the record. He's played for Chelsea so many times, 700 and whatever. And I bet you can't name me someone who's really tied Ronnie up and gone past him and scored loads of goals. No one has.
Well, I'm going to agree with you, lads. I actually think Ron Harris deserves his place in the Chelsea Hall of Fame. And we're now going to move across the back four to the two centre-half positions, which is going to be a little bit more difficult, I think. What about you, Tom? One of your centre-halves or as a pair? Because it is important, you know, that centre-halves play as a pair.
That's right. I've picked my two as a pair, which is John Dempsey and David Webb. And you can't mention one without mentioning the other, especially in John Dempsey and David Webb's case.
The two people who played in the cup final, of course.
They played in the cup final, but all the years they each played about 8 years for Chelsea, and they complemented each other. Webby got all
just on that point, is that an important criteria for you when you picked your team, Tom, that they've got to have played for Chelsea for a certain amount of time, or did you not really give that much consideration when picking your side?
No, the consideration I give was that they played together. If they'd have played 2 or 3 years together and it worked out so well, I would have still picked those two. It's just they played for a quite long time at Chelsea, but Dempsey, he sort of complemented Webby. Webby used to dive in. He was so enthusiastic and he had to be in there tackling. And if the centre forward got past, there was Dempsey, bump, kick it into touch. And you could not get past John Dempsey.
What about you, Alan?
Well, I'm more of a, as you know, more of a purist. Marvin Hinton is one of the best back players I've ever seen, but I'm leaving him out. I'm going for Paul Elliott.
Paul Elliott, very interesting choice.
I think he was playing superbly. He would have been, possibly if he hadn't have got the injury, I'd have think he would have been legendary. A wonderful player, strong.
I've got to ask you the same questions I asked Tom. You know, what consideration did you give when picking your side? Because obviously Paul Elliott didn't play for Chelsea for such a long time because of that injury. Do you, when you picked your team, look at players who've actually played for Chelsea only perhaps one season and moved on, or did you actually look at what they've actually done at Chelsea?
Well, no, I look at how they could have done. Injuries like buying Pele, he only plays for 3 months, gets injured. You can't say, well, he weren't the best player they've ever had. Paul Elliott would have gone on to much greater things.
But don't you
and I think great centre-halves can play alongside each other. I mean, Alf Ramsey thought Jack Charlton and Bobby Moore would be the perfect double, but I think us three would disagree, you know, because they're chalk and cheese. But Paul Elliott was a very, very special player.
Okay, let's just move on from Paul to bring in your other partner in this heart of the defence there. Who would you play alongside him?
Well, I'll go by picking Colin Pates in front of Marvin. I think if Patesy had played under a different management and I tried to get him a different club, I think he'd have got many England caps. I think it was so underrated.
Colin, of course, played for Chelsea and Arsenal and played very well for both.
Yeah.
But do you think they could play together?
Absolutely.
Do you think centre halves, if they're good enough?
Well, it's all about if they got anything between their ears.
But
and you know, these were two very, very.
Would they complement each other?
Yes.
I was actually lucky enough to play with both of them centre halves, and the merits of Paul Elliott was that he was big, strong, attacked the ball very well. Colin Pates was more of the sweeper type who could get round, great left foot, more comfortable on the ball, came out of the back with the ball, and quite happy to move the ball on into midfield areas. So yes, I could perhaps see them complementing each other.
Yeah.
So are we going to agree to differ on the two centre halves then, or is there
I'm
any
not so sure
common ground
about.
anywhere?
Well, he's mates with Webby and Dempsey, so you know.
No, it's not to do with that. I think your defenders, you're at the heart of the defence, and you've got strikers coming up against you, class players like your Dennis Laws and your Jimmy Greaves at the time, and these two were hard nuts.
Yeah.
And Dempsey never played a ball in his life. I think he scored one goal in the European Cup Winners' Cup final, didn't he?
Well.
But they used to just get the ball out of there, and for a striker,
I think these days, Tom, you've got to look at. I understand what you're saying; it's what you want out of your team. But I think these days, defenders now have to be footballers as well. And I don't see how you can leave out either of you the merits of Marcel Desailly, for me, who has won the World Cup while he was at Chelsea, the European Championships while he was at Chelsea, and still a key member of France's international team. Been a great player for the club.
Well, you're right.
Won a lot of trophies with the club as well.
Well, that's my team. You know, I like a good.
I'm not going to argue with you. You're entitled to your opinion.
I'm a striker, and I would hate to play against those two. Believe me. And Chopper, by the way, Ronnie Harris.
You're going for all
and the other one.
You're going for all the hard nuts along the back line. I mean,
well, I think defence is. Well, you think so? Desailly can be hard when he wants to be.
Well, I think he's been found out quite a bit at Chelsea.
No.
So okay then, chaps, we're going to agree to differ, because I don't think any of us can agree what type of centre half we want, and we're going to move on to the left back position.
Yeah.
Okay.
It brings me to a numerous. Well, there's plenty of candidates here, but I'm going to let you two decide first. Tom, left back position.
I'm back to the old days again, the 70s, which is
He loves
Eddie
the 70s.
McCready. Eddie McCready was some man. In fact, the back four, it was called the ugliest back four in the country at the time. But Eddie was, as a full-back, he'd get forward, he was quick, fast, he could tackle, he could cross a ball, both feet, and wingers just didn't get past him. We used to say, every time there was a winger, a really good winger, come up against him in the dressing room before the game, say, "Oh, Eddie, you've got one today. You're going to have trouble." And he used to say, "Aye, but they cannot run without legs," and they never got past him.
I never would have thought Tommy Baldwin would love people who kick people. You never come across like that to me, Tom.
No, it's not kicking. It's a skill kicking. Believe me.
Kicking and not getting caught.
And not getting caught.
Tackling.
But tackling is the game. There's a tackling skill as well as anything else. But for Eddie, the only problem he ever had was Mick Summerby of Man City, because Mick used to kick fullbacks, and it was always a great game to watch them together. But Eddie, for me, is best left back.
Al?
I must agree. He was the best fullback in the world, and every time they picked a world 11, Eddie was in it. And to cut it short, I'll tell you a lovely story he told me the other week. I asked him what it was like to play against Stanley Matthews when he was 48, 49 years of age. And he said I was absolutely stunned. I didn't know what to do. I come out the tunnel and I looked at Stanley Matthews, 49 years of age. He said, and I let him have the ball, and I let him have the ball, I let him have the ball. I come off at half time and all sitting around in the dressing room, and Tommy Docherty said to me, "That is the worst I've ever seen you play. If you ever play like that again for another 45 minutes, Stanley Matthews is just a number 7. That's all he is. So get out there and hammer him." He said, "I got out there first couple of minutes, we never see him again." And that was, so he was human as well as being tough. And he's also the only one that's ever had Johnny Giles carried off the football field. So Eddie McCready was, and Jim Baxter said he was the best left back he's seen as well.
High praise indeed. Did anyone come close? Anyone else? I mean, anyone you thought about? Graham Lesseau, for example, had a great season last year for Chelsea. For me, should have gone with the England squad.
Not for me, no.
Not for you?
Me, no.
Well, for me, I think he's a good fullback, and for me, if you want to tell the truth, I think he picks his games to play in, and he's always up for it against the top teams. But the lesser teams, he seems to disappear a bit. And
there's no one in the class.
And he made a couple of boo-boos for England when he played for England, if you remember.
Okay.
A couple of years ago.
Yeah.
So the bottom line is Eddie McCready.
Absolutely.
Definitely.
Midfield 4, chaps. We're going to start with the right side, and we'll work across. Whether you employ a winger or whatever, or right-sided midfielder as they're called these days. Tom, you can go first.
Well, I've got Charlie Cook, my old pal Charlie, and what a player, what a ball player. We used to call him, well, there's what they call the Scotsman that came to Tanner ball player. He could do anything with the ball. And the best thing about Charlie was he would never shoot. He never scored many goals.
He'd never shoot?
He'd never shoot. He'd always pass it to me. And then I'd nick another goal. But Charlie had everything.
I had one of them, you know, Pat Nevin. He used to do a lot of, something similar for me.
Well, but Charlie...
but he was his drinking partner as well, Carrie.
Oh, well, yeah, I mean, Charlie were big buddies, yeah. We lived in Fulham together all the time, and
Yeah.
we used to go out, and my kids still go across and see him in America. He's got a coaching school out there.
Nothing to do with the reason he's in your side?
No, really. I really admired him. He was some player, and he could go 90 minutes plus. And the best thing was, when we all got tired, it's coming 86 minutes, and we're getting overrun by them. Just give the ball to Charlie, and he hangs on to it. He just stays with it for about 5 minutes.
I'll come to you in a minute, Al. The comparisons between Charlie Cook and Pat Nevin were very similar. I wasn't lucky enough to see enough of Charlie, but Pat Nevin, a lot of similar things were said about him during my time, and I'd have thought he would have been a candidate, but we'll come on to that in a while. Alan, who have you got in your team?
Well, like you, I mean, I trained with Pat as well. I never played with Pat, but he couldn't live with Charlie.
No?
No. He couldn't live with Charlie. Charlie was, it was mentioned early on about George Best. If he hadn't been around, it would have been Charlie Cook. But the problem with Charlie Cook, he never played enough. He probably played about 8 games a year, but when he did, he was the best player in the world. If he was sober the whole year round, he would have been the most incredible player of all time. He had more, and I would play inside him, and I would whack balls at him, and just say, "Get on with that," and you know, only for 10 yards, and he would just kill things, and he would, you know, he could beat people without even knowing it. You know, he had wonderful balance, same as George Best. He could take people on, but for me, he didn't do it enough. If he had have done it enough in my first season, I think we possibly could have won the championship. But definitely Charlie Cook.
Okay, so once again we agree, chaps, Charlie Cook on the right side of midfield.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Well, we'll go across the midfield. I don't know how you boys saw the shape of the side, but you're looking at whether we're having 2 ball winners, a couple of wingers or what, but how do you see your central midfield going, Alan?
Well, we've got some names here, and as we spoke about, Glenn Hoddle's there, and he's one of my all-time favourite players, but I don't think he played enough for Chelsea. I think he's coming to the end of his career there. I've gone for George Graham, because I think George played in that terrific Chelsea team, and when he went to Arsenal, he won the double.
Should that come into an all-time Chelsea team, the fact he won the double at Arsenal?
Yeah, because if he'd have stayed at Chelsea, Chelsea might have won the double.
No.
George was a very, very special player. No, George Graham was a great player. They used to call him Stroller, but he was a great player. He was very deceiving, and he'd get you 10, 15 goals from midfield, just from dead balls. Unlike Tommy, who we were talking about earlier on, he's a midfield player. Tommy wasn't a midfield player. Tommy was an out-and-out striker, in my eyes. But George Graham could move back into that position and do an all-round good job. I know Arsenal played in that way, but he was a lot better player than people give him credit for.
Let's talk about George then. Me and him swapped over. He went to Arsenal, I went to Chelsea.
He's starting to get the ump now.
This was in 1966. Yeah. When did Arsenal do the double?
I suppose 4 years later.
71.
Yeah.
5 years later.
Yeah.
What was George doing in those 5 years? What were Arsenal doing? They weren't doing anything.
No.
So,
but they were building Arsenal at that time were building a team. They had Charlie George coming along and Ray Kennedy coming along.
No, they still had the same guy, John Radford, up front when I was there.
Yeah.
It took them 5 years.
Yeah.
And they still had, and then Ray Kennedy came in.
I take it by this discussion, Tom, you've got someone different in your midfield.
I think so, yeah.
Well, let's have it then. Ray Wilkins.
Ray Wilkins. And,
Chelsea captain at 17?
Right, yeah. And when he played for Chelsea, what a good player he was. And he'd score goals from midfield.
I'll ask you the same question. Was Ray better remembered for his time at Manchester United, or do you think he did enough at Chelsea to warrant getting in your side?
No, I think he was a better player at Chelsea. Eddie McCready played him. Dave Sexton played him to start with, but Eddie McCready took him over. And Eddie, I know, used to say, get off. He had a terrific shot on him. And he had a lot of good vision. He would hit long balls across field, and he would run at defences and shoot. When he went to Manchester United, he wouldn't shoot.
You say Ray shot? Well, certainly one of the criticisms during Ray's career was that he never got forward enough and never shot enough over the period of his career, whether that be with Manchester United or England.
That's right. When he went to Manchester United in England, he suddenly stopped that. He was picking balls up off the fullback, I remember. But at Chelsea, Eddie McCready had him going forward all the time and shooting. And I bet if you check up goals scored per games, I bet he's got a good average for Chelsea.
Okay, I'm not going to take you to task on that one, because you've obviously picked your team and there's a lot of thought gone into it. You've got Ray Wilkins and George Graham. Who have you got playing alongside him, and how are they going to play as a pair? Alan?
Well, I'll cause another argument. Potentially, again, like Colin Pates, had he played for a different team under a different manager, I thought Mick Fillery could have been as good as anybody in the country, and I put him in this team.
So you've got George Graham and Mick Fillery.
Yeah.
No
Yeah.
tackler, no bite in midfield anywhere, because I know Mickey Fillery, great left
Well,
foot.
with the 3 players I've picked so far, they may not have to tackle because they might have the ball all the time. But no, Mick Fillery he was one of those players, and you knew him, didn't you?
I did, yeah. A bit like Mickey Hazard was in that role
Yeah,
as well.
yeah,
I mean,
terrific.
Great passer of a ball,
Terrific.
got good vision, could drop a ball into a forward, put it over the top.
Yeah,
Great range of passing as well.
yeah.
Someone who I would have put in, yourself, Alan. I mean, Tom, I don't know.
Well,
whether
I did. I put Alan in, yeah.
he was
He
your other central midfield player.
Yeah.
For what reason? Tell us.
Well, the reason I got Charlie in is because he was a ball player, he could do anything, but you couldn't get the ball off him. With Alan, he was a great ball player as well. He could pull the ball down, but he had great vision. And me being a striker, if I would run off into a space, he'd give you that early ball, and everyone in the team used to get that early ball and put you through. He didn't keep on dribbling people or trying to beat people. He'd look for you, and it was there. And he had his passing was superb. The only thing, never headed the ball. You wouldn't think so, would you, with a hair like that?
Scar.
But he didn't need to head a ball, did he? Just as to bring it down, bump, look up, knock it, and goal. And he was fit. I don't know how, but he was fit, I tell you. And he could go past people. Oh,
Worked hard,
so-
Tom.
He was
Worked
still
hard.
fit in
I'm trying
'83 when I came there to Chelsea.
Yeah.
Alan was training with us for the first few months or so, and still very fit at the time.
But
Still trying,
his
Terry,
vision in the
still
game,
trying.
his vision in the game was the greatest, and he used to bring everyone into the game. You know, he didn't have to look sometimes. He would just swivel and just hit the ball without looking. Of course, you know, I'd be running there. You knew that.
Yeah.
But,
Left out some great names. Rude Hullett
Didn't play enough.
didn't play enough.
he was
Fantastic.
He was
Fantastic.
Would
he was
probably
great. He was great, but he was just a bit over the top when he went
Yeah.
to Chelsea.
Yeah.
And he didn't play that many games, and he played too deep when he played for them anyhow. I mean, when he played for Milan.
Got to ask you about Dennis Wise. Most recently, 10 years at the club, lifted more trophies as a captain. I think Ron Harris might tell me different, but I think Dennis lifted more. Whether they were of the stature or not, I don't know. But I think he's lifted more than
Well,
anyone
they
else
got
at
5
Chelsea.
under Vialli, and he must have been there with Vialli, wasn't he?
Yes, he was, yeah.
And I think he played in all the games.
Was he a consideration?
Not for me, no. I think he's a very good player. But if we're looking for the best team and the best talent, and that's probably why I've gone for who I've gone for. A couple of these players, Colin Pates, Mick Fillery, the problem was they weren't ambitious enough. They didn't want to be the best. They were happy just to play. And I think if they had a little bit more ambition with the players we have around them, you know, they could have been great, great players. Dennis Wise was a very good player. I think he did a good job. But he was a job player. He captained Chelsea, which, with all the names on the sheet of paper we got, you know, there was about 10 captains in front of him.
So how are we going to end this? We've got 4 different players in central midfield. Are we going to beg to
Well-
differ? Will any of you bend at all with anyone else's agreement? Or
Well, you talked about Dennis Wise, and I thought, I haven't got any tough guys in my midfield. I've got all playmakers,
as Alan has?
as I have. I've
Up
got
to
my
now.
tough guys at the back. They can handle anything coming through. So I want people to make the plays and be able to create stuff for the front men.
So finally, lads, we've come to the left-sided slot on midfield, and I wonder whether you've gone for a bit of balance in the 4-4-2 by playing a natural left-sided player, or have you gone for someone who could actually do a job on that left side? Tom, we'll start with you.
Well, I've picked Gus Poyet. I think he's another great midfield guy. With the added plus, he gets into that box and scores goals. And he's got to be the best midfield player that header of a ball, he's in there and he's jumping, he hangs, and he scored lots of goals for Chelsea. And he's the sort of player that, with the midfield I've picked, I think he can get forward into the box and they'll provide the service for him.
Because he certainly did that a lot of times for Chelsea, playing on that left-sided role whereby he could make his blindside runs and not get picked up.
Exactly.
And that's the role you would see him in playing for you.
He just seems to ghost into the position and their defence doesn't seem to know about it, and he's there and, well, it's a goal.
I can understand that. Alan, what about yourself?
Yeah, I mean, he's a great player, Poyet. I must agree with everything Tom says. But you two being frontmen and strikers, somewhere along the line, if we had players like that all through the midfield, you'd never get any crosses in. And I think Mick Thomas would be, you know, the kind of player that you'd love because you know what he's going to do. He grabs hold of the ball, he's a little battler, he gets to the line and he puts good quality crosses in. And we've all seen when later on in life how he scored free kicks from all angles for Wrexham and stuff like that. And Mickey is one of those players, wherever he's played, he's been the favourite of the fans everywhere. He was fantastic for Manchester United. And when he came to the Bridge, I think he give you that extra. I think I left in the Christmas, he came around that time and he pushed you on that another notch.
He certainly did, Alan. He came in the January, I think it was snowing, I remember the game, his first game away at Derby County. We ended up winning the game. We was on quite a good run anyway, but we'd had a little patch over Christmas where we drew a couple of games. And I think John Neal decided there and then that he's got to do something about the left side. He wasn't quite happy with it. And he brought in Mickey Thomas, and you're right, he gave us that little bit of inspiration to go and take the second division title, and he played excellently.
Yeah.
And once again, you are right, he was a crowd favourite.
Yeah.
I can understand Mickey giving you balance on the left. So, but there's your four chaps. I mean, is there anyone we've missed out who you think should have been in? You'd like to change anyone, or are you going to stick with your original selections?
Well, I'm quite happy with mine, with what we got to select from.
Well, I don't think Chelsea really did anything with him in the team, did they?
With Mickey.
They didn't win anything, or
Well, yeah, they got promotion.
oh, they got promoted.
Yeah,
That's
you
right,
can only
yeah,
you
that's
can only
right.
win the league you're in, Tom. I mean,
Yeah, oh yeah, I agree with you, but you know, we're talking about the first division here.
Well, we are, but again, you can only have a look at players. You might say, well, Colin Pate's done nothing, but that was only because of the situation he was in. He was told not to pass the ball. He was told to get the ball up to Kerry and Speedy as quickly as he could, and he was a centre half.
Yeah, well, that's what centre half should do, isn't it?
No, you just
That's
said,
why they're
you just
centre
said
halves,
centre
because they
halves
can't
should
play
kick it in the
They
stand.
can't play up front. That's why they're centre halves. And apart from the fact you said to me, you said you need someone to cross the ball.
Yes.
Everybody in my team can cross a ball. You cross loads of balls. I've scored from your crosses. Charlie crossed them. Butch Wilkins had a great free kick and crosser of a ball. And Gus Poyet does as well from the left, if you remember.
They used to cross balls from too deep.
No.
Mick Thomas was an out-and-out left winger.
Charlie would get past the fullback and just whip it in without beating the fullback.
Well,
That was a big thing.
that was
Sexton
Charlie
made
on a
him
good
do.
day. That was Charlie on a good day.
Well-
Charlie is one of the greatest players for the way Charlie played, but you couldn't rely on Charlie to get crosses in.
Well, I'll tell you, I scored a lot of goals at the near post off Charlie.
And that was
And
that was on a Thursday night.
I know no one wanted to play out in the right.
Okay, chaps, I think where we're going, we're not going to agree on this midfield four. I'm going to allow you to keep your own selections.
But that's a wonderful thing, because although the game's about opinions, I mean, there's so many good players there with different styles that we're going to differ. And at about 9 o'clock tonight, we're going to differ even more.
You might pick a different team by now.
Well,
Absolutely.
Well, it might
Absolutely.
do, but I've got the basis of my team, and
Yeah.
and the ones I didn't play with, I think would fit into my team,
Sure.
basically.
Right, lads, it comes to the front line, and there's so many names down here. I mean, you're going to have a fine time looking through them and coming up with a couple of strikers.
Well, I name them as a pair without having Hutch with Osgood. Osgood is obviously, I never see much of Tommy Lawton, But I would imagine probably the greatest centre forward Chelsea's ever had, and that is with respect to you, even if you were second to him. I mean, this fella was an amazing, amazing player. His strengths were all over the place. They were in his feet, they were in his chest, they were in his head. But the most amazing thing he had, which I've never seen from any other player in 20 years in the game, is his confidence. And he went out on the field knowing he was going to score. He sent me to bed before cup finals like I was a little kid and said, "Go to bed, son, I'll score for you tomorrow," and would always do it. A wonderful, amazing player. And probably, apart from Jimmy Greaves, I don't know, with the Chelsea crowd, he was God.
Jimmy, of course, can't be in these strikers because he was prior to 1965, of course.
Otherwise, it'd have been alongside him. Yeah.
Who is the other one you've picked alongside, Alan?
Well, I've had to go with the man you nearly caught and should have caught, Bobby Tamblyn. For many different reasons. He started when Chelsea weren't really, they were an up-and-coming side when Doherty changed the team. And if you see, we called him Jumbo, if you see Jumbo in training, I trained with him, and he was just coming to the end as I was starting. You wouldn't believe this fella could score, 5 a season.
202 he got in 15 years at Chelsea.
Yeah. And mostly all-important goals when they were struggling. But
every striker will tell you, Alan, they're all important goals.
Absolutely. But you wouldn't think in training that this fella could score so many goals. He was uncanny. He hit goals from everywhere, and as I say, they called him Jumbo. He had a hump. He ran with a hump, and no one knew what he was going to do, whether he was going to go right, left. He didn't even know where he was going, but my God, he knew where the goal was, and you can't knock the record.
And do you think he would have complemented Peter in that position? The two would have played well together? Different strengths?
Yes, I do. I think anyone playing with Osgood would have did all right with him, because Ozzy could change his game and make it easy for his partner, because he had a wonderful touch and a wonderful mind of how to play the game. I think they would have been fantastic together.
What about you, Tom?
I'll pick the same two, funny enough, Peter Osgood and Bobby Tamblyn.
There we go.
And, well, what can you say about Peter Osgood? He did it all, didn't he? His skill on the ground for a big fella. And they said he was a bit slowish, but he had a big long stride, and he used to get very deceiving. He used to get past defenders, and he knew where the goal was. Yeah. And good in the air, on the ground, to pass the ball to his teammates. Mind you, I used to do all his running. All he did was stand up there, and I used to lay him on for him, didn't I? Yeah. And Bobby Tamblyn, Bobby, he scored 200 odd goals, and for Chelsea, he's a record goal scorer, and you nearly beat him. But you're very similar to him, because you all scored all your goals in the second division, didn't you? But
these old timers.
Apart from that, Bobby Tamblyn, he's a phenomenal. He was a scoring goals.
He was a bit of a freak, because my boss at Stoke, Tony Waddington, told me you can tell a good footballer by the way he walks. Well, he would never have bought Bobby Tamblyn. He was the strangest. He didn't have that balance of a great player. He was a bit bow-legged.
And he didn't have a hump anyhow. He was just slightly bowed like that. It's the way he was. He walked like that.
It was my sense of humour, Tom.
But you get that ball on his left peg in front of him too.
Yeah.
He didn't like his back to the goal. That was one thing.
That's right.
He used to get the hump otherwise. But
listen, lads, any other considerations in that department? Other than myself, of course, there was Gianfranco Zola, Mark Hughes, Gordon Jury, David Speedy.
I was thinking about you and Speedy, because I was thinking of two link-ups, and I thought you and David Speedy, Kerry Dixon and David Speedy, I thought, what a combination. And he was so fiery, Speedy, wasn't he? And he was
good player,
go for everything. Yeah. And he
complemented each other.
You did.
Yeah.
I thought it was a great partnership.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
again, I couldn't leave Osgood out, and as we were saying earlier, Jimmy Greaves, he wouldn't like to leave
And
out.
the great shame we got
he
Osgood in
wasn't-
the same row as Jimmy Floyd Hasselbank now.
Hasselbank, of course,
If
again.
Hasselbank was to play at Chelsea at the top of his game and not want to leave and put his heart and soul into it, he would probably break the record if he spent 10 years there.
Oh, I don't think anyone's ever going to break the record, Al, if you do your maths. He's
Oh,
going
no.
to need to score 20 goals a season for at least 10 seasons, and it's going to take some doing at the moment.
Well, he could do it, but no one's loyal enough to stay 10 seasons.
Well, with Jimmy the age he is as well, he's going to get nowhere near it. He'll do well to get 100 goals.
He's off to Barcelona, anyhow, isn't he?
Yeah. But
told me.
he's a great goal scorer.
Great goal scorer, yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Oh, he's got some shot on him, hasn't he? He's got a dig like.
Shot in both feet. Mark Hughes came to Chelsea, scored some important goals for them.
Yeah.
Had his best time at Manchester United, of course.
Yeah. Can't knock him. Done wonderful.
A fighter, and it's
The
great.
one thing about
Great.
Mark Hughes, he was great to, if you've got kids, show the kids of him in the video and say this is how you become a front man. You join in the play, you come and bring people in, and he did it wonderfully. But he never got a lot of goals.
Never did, Mark.
No, but he was always
was
had his back to goal. He was, I played like that to start with, where he's the target man, and you play the ball up to him, and he hangs on to it, and he fights, and he keeps it.
Yeah.
And the rest of the people around him score all the goals, which is...
But nevertheless, you're staying with Tamblyn and Osgood.
And we agree on it.
That's a surprise, isn't it? Yeah, I do. Yeah, I think that would be... There's a lot of goals in those two.
Yeah.
A lot of goals.
Amazing.
Thank you very much, lads. Okay, so there we have it. The Chelsea all-time 11 from Tommy and Alan. In goal, the great Peter Bonetti. At right full-back, Ron Harris. At left full-back, Eddie McCready. And both lads agree on all of them three positions. The two centre-backs, John Dempsey and David Webb. Paul Elliott and Colin Pates. Midfield, right side, Charlie Cook. Midfield, left side, Mickey Thomas and Gus Poyet. Central midfield, Alan Hudson, Ray Wilkins, George Graham and Mike Fillery. And both lads agree on their two strikers, Peter Osgood and Bobby Tambling. Tommy Docherty signed you for Chelsea, but it was Dave Sexton that gave you the opportunity to play in the cup final. What specific role did he give you on that day?
Well, I played in the cup final in '67 under Tommy Docherty. It was totally different. I played up front, and then I played in place of Alan Hudson in the final in '70 against Leeds, and Alan plays midfield. Usually I'm up front and running for the ball off defenders, but this time I'm playing right-sided midfield, and. We had the team talk, everyone knew what we were going to do. Then Dave Sexton came up to me, and just before we'd gone out, he said, "Now, Tom," he said, "you're playing right-sided midfield." He said, "Now we've got Terry Cooper. He can catch pigeons. Just make sure you slow him down. Just cover him all the time. Make sure he doesn't get past you." I said, "All right, Dave." He said, and Norman Hunter, he's left-sided. He sometimes has a goal forward, has a bonk on, and just be aware of him and get in there. "Yeah, Dave, that's fine." He said, and Johnny Giles comes across the left. He's left midfield. And sometimes Bremner too. They swap over quite a lot. So be aware of them and pick them up. "Okay, Dave." I said, "Yeah." He said, "And we've got Eddie Gray. See if you can nick in there, if he's taking on Webby, see if you can get your foot in." And I thought, "Yeah, sure, Dave, yeah, that's fine. There's 5 players I've got to pick up." He said, thanks, Tom, and he turned away. I went, 5 players, and he turns back to me again. He says, oh, by the way, Tommy, I forgot. Make sure you get up and try and nick a goal as well.
Well, Alan, someone who certainly would have been playing in the 1970 Cup final, why wasn't you?
Well, I don't know. Well, you do know. Quite recently, I had a real bad car accident, and it could only happen to me. And I spent a lot of time in hospital having a look at how I missed that cup final. And I bet if there was just one hole on the playing field at West Bromwich Albion, I went down it. And I ripped my ankle to pieces, and that was the reason I missed the final. I sat on the line, coming off the field. Dave Sexton said to me, you're going in hospital on Monday. We would have won today if you'd have played. And we're going to get you ready for Old Trafford. And I had a fitness test before the game at Old Trafford, and my ankle was still not good enough.
What was the thoughts going through your mind at that particular period when you realised that you were actually going to miss this final? What was you thinking to yourself? Are you thinking, I hope they win, I hope they draw, I'm gutted, I'm going to miss it? What was going on in your mind?
I became a Fulham supporter. Now, I really look back at times and can't really explain what it was like. It was horrendous, especially in my first season. I mean, and the excitement our team had in that season alone was just something to behold, really. You know, we really belted. We just didn't win the FA Cup. We belted everybody, and it was just so incredible. And then that happened to me, and I thought, as you do, why me?
You were regarded at Chelsea as a fashion icon, a fantastic player, of course, but you actually joined the club after being rejected as a schoolboy.
Yeah, my father took me to Fulham because we were Fulham supporters, and said my son would like to come down to training, and one of the coaches said he's too small. And my father said he's only 13, he will grow, and that was it. So he marched me into Stamford Bridge, and I started training there Tuesday and Thursday from a 13-year-old.
After being involved in the initial World Cup 40 for 1970 and not making the final cut, you didn't get your first international cap until years later when you was at Stoke under Tony Waddington. Why do you think that was?
Like everything else in life, it's all about opinions, and opinions of what manager runs the team at that time. But I was told that I would be taking part in the 70 World Cup in one way or another. I don't know what game, or whether he'd used me to come on at last 20 minutes because of me being like 18, use my legs or whatever. But he obviously was thinking of me playing. As for being 1975 when we played the West Germans, I truly believe that I was picked to foul. And
that's not something we remember Alan Hudson by.
No, well, the problem we had was Don Revie was manager, and Don Revie didn't particularly like Chelsea players, especially after the cup final. And I remember sometime after that he picked 80 players to turn up at a hotel in Manchester, and after a game on a Saturday, it was quite incredible. One player dropped out, so he brought in Peter Osgood. So I always used to pull Ozzy's leg and say, what's it like being the 81st best player in England? And it would rile him. How could you leave Peter Osgood out of 80 players? So that also confirmed that, you know, he didn't like us, he didn't like me, he never spoke to me as I walked out the door to play against the West Germans. They were world champions, and he should have been really saying, come on son, this is your big chance. But he didn't. He didn't say to me, well done afterwards. So We know, don't we? We know.
Where did you go after Stoke, Alan?
I left Stoke to go to Arsenal. The reason being that at Stoke we were supposed to play Tottenham in an FA Cup match on a Wednesday, and they got there and they come out to look at the pitch, and the top of the stand blew off and we couldn't play the match. And being as professional as Stoke City were, they wasn't insured. So it was me again that had to go. So within that week I was at Arsenal, but I signed for Arsenal when I shouldn't have signed. I didn't have a medical. I had a terrible abdominal injury, which I had for quite a while. And I didn't play for about 3 months, 4 months while I was there. So they must have thought, you know, this fella from Chelsea, from the King's Road, he's just come over here to have a laugh. And but it wasn't that way. And I never really fulfilled, I showed the Arsenal fans how I could really play. And because I loved Arsenal and I loved their fans, and, you know, I just wanted to play great for Arsenal, and I never reached the heights of, you know, the days under Tony Waddington.
Where did you go after Arsenal and why?
Well, I didn't want to, never ever wanted to leave Arsenal. I played at Highbury when I played for West London. I was only 15, schoolboys, against Charlie George, Ray Kennedy and that. And I fell in love with the place then. And when I actually went there, you know, I was over the moon, but I did have a bad injury and never really got over it. Within that time, there was plenty of battles between me and the manager. Then he sent me home from a tour from Australia.
Just remind us who that manager was.
That manager, Terry Neal, I think. I'll go funny when I mention his name, Kerry. Yeah, so he sent me a Malcolm home, Australia, which was completely farcical because the team were coming home the next day anyway. So he just did it for a publicity thing to get his face in the paper again, and it was never going to work. But incredibly, we got to the cup final the next year, and I was in that team, and we got beat by Ipswich. We didn't play at all well, and that was the writing on the wall. I was gone.
Your travels then took you to America, where it seemed a lot of English players were playing at the time, and I think it took you to Seattle.
Yeah. By the time I went to Seattle, there were loads of players who had played in the second and third division and couldn't really get a living. Some good players. Two come to mind. One was a fella called Steve Battle, who was a magnificent player, but he couldn't pass a medical as well. He had a gammy knee, but he was a magic player. And another ex-Southampton player, Tommy Jenkins, who was another very skillful player. But I was the first full signing, that they made, and I think they paid about 100 grand for me.
What made you go to America, and why do you think that so many English players were going there at the time?
Well, out of the 92 English league clubs, nobody wanted me. By now, I was, you know, endangered species probably. But many managers, like Tony Waddington, especially, see me the opposite. They give me my head, my responsibility to play, and that's all I wanted to do. But
who was the manager that signed you for Seattle?
Jimmy Gabriel was the manager, who we knew well. The Chelsea team knew well because we toured with Southampton once, and we drank Jamaica dry. We had a drinking contest with them, and we just about shaded it. Jimmy was a tremendous character. And of course he had Harry Redknapp alongside him at that time. And Bobby Moore came into the bridge one day. I was serving the drinks in my box, and he said, "What are you doing? You know, 5 years ago I said you was going to be the greatest thing since sliced bread, and now you're serving drinks here. He said, Jimmy Gabriel's outside, go and speak to him. I played in Seattle last year. If you can't get a game here, don't pack up now. George Best had just packed up too young. He said, no, you're doing the same thing. He said, no. So he spoke me into it, and I met Jimmy, and after half an hour, I was not only his drinking partner, but I was his player. And I had an absolutely wonderful time. I played for Seattle Sounders for 4 years. I captained them, then I was assistant coach. It was terrific. I had a wonderful time there.
Got to ask, how did the league compare at the time to what was then the old First Division?
Well, there was too many people too quickly to put the league down. I played against players that I couldn't even tell you their names, from Brazil and Argentina and this, and they were some wonderful players. The top team was the New York Cosmos. They had Beckenbauer, they had Neeskins, they had Giorgio Chinaglia, who Swansea didn't want to sign, and what a goal scorer. Ricebergen, who just won the World Cup with Holland, you know, they just, and I remember them, we played them one night, and Steve Hunt, who used to play for Coventry, was on the bench. He couldn't get even near the field, and he at that time was playing for England. So it showed you, you know, just how much talent there was over in the NSL, and I had a wonderful experience there, and there was no easy games.
Something I have to ask you, Alan, what happened with Hercules Alicante?
Yeah, well, I was quite delighted. You know, Arsenal couldn't get rid of me. They wanted their money back. They wanted me to go and play again, really. The manager did anyway, because he would lose face with directors for buying trouble. But I was called in by Ken Fryer, who was a general manager at Arsenal. Great fella, fantastic fella. And he said that a team from Spain wanted to sign me. And this was something that was a dream. You know, Real Madrid, Barcelona, you know, all those great teams over there. And then he mentioned a second division team called Hercules. So I said, yeah, let's speak to them. I'll take a trip out there, have a look, see what they're all about, how they play, and if it suits me, I'll go. And nothing more come of it. So I don't know even if there was a team called Hercules.
Just trying to send it to Spain.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Didn't you write a column as well towards the end of your career? You started writing a column for the Sporting Life, was it?
I did, yeah. That was terrific.
Was that something you wanted to do or go into after football, writing or journalism?
Well, I did even at school. If I thought I wasn't going to make it as a footballer, that was the next best thing, because I was just football crazy, and I used to go to football matches and every night get home after matches and write about the game, and I had books and books and books. And I started writing for the Sentinel in Stoke-on-Trent, which went well. And then Tom Clark from the Sporting Life phoned me up and said, how do you fancy doing a bit with us? So I had a 2-day column in that, which was great. So I was enjoying, I really enjoy my writing. I've wrote a book and I'm just finishing another one. So that, especially with the injuries now, I've got a lot of time on my hands to do such a thing.
Yes, you talk about your injuries. In 1997, I think that you had a near fatal car crash, and obviously it's taken its toll on you. How bad was that car crash?
Well, many of the surgeons and consultants were dumbfounded that I just survived it, really. But even now, I go back. I've got 2 more operations to go, but even now I come in and they're proud of themselves that, you know, they got me through that period. I was 8 weeks in the intensive care, where every day, you know, they told my family that, you know, prepare for the worst, and the rest is history. But I did work hard. I think all the work I was doing, I was training every morning. Even that morning of the accident, I was in the gym doing an hour on the bike and everything else we do when we were training, and I would never fail to do that, and I think it kept me alive.
Alan, obviously you finished playing now. Is there anything you regret about your football career, or are you proud of what you achieved?
Well, I'm very proud of what I've achieved in the game, because I've done it against all the odds, really. What with injuries, what with managers that didn't like my lifestyle. I didn't do too badly on top of that. Probably my one big regret was I had a chance to take over the Stoke managership back in mid-80s, and probably the one biggest was I refused to play against Brazil one night. Ron Greenwood was manager, and he phoned me up at my local pub on a Sunday night and asked me if I'd like to play against Brazil on Wednesday, because one of the boys had pulled out. He said, but if you turn up, you'll definitely be playing. So for anybody to turn that down has got screw loose. But I'm very proud. I got 2 England caps. I wish I'd have only got 1, and that was against the West Germans, because the Cyprus game didn't count. But I'd love to have played in that Brazil game, but I was in such. I'd been banned by England for 3 years. I'd only ever get called in when somebody was pulling out, you know. Even Stevie Wonder got in front of me a couple of times. But, you know, so it wasn't in my heart at the time. It wasn't, and I really had wished, I apologise to Ron Greenwood. I'd say it's nothing to do with you. I think you've been a fantastic manager. I'd love to have played under you, but no thanks. And that was a big regret.
And finally, Alan, what are you doing with yourself now?
Well, my main job is keeping myself, you know, healthy. That is from first thing in the morning to the last thing at night. I'm looking for more work, writing-wise. I write a lot, and as I say, I'm working on this new book, which I've nearly finished. I enjoy my writing, but the most important thing, I'm enjoying life again, which whilst the 11 months in hospital, I didn't think I'd be able to do that. There was times they were going to amputate my legs, and the problem with the brain, you know, a lot of people say you've always had a problem with your brain, but now this was serious. This was a heavy duty thing. So, you know, when things look like they're going bad or it starts raining, you've got to think, hey, you know, you've come through all that. It can't be so bad. So I'm quite happy with my life. Thank you, Cal.
An FA Cup final, Ron. Every kid's dream to play in an FA Cup final. Of course, it wasn't your first cup final, but it was one of the great cup finals of all time, I dare say, certainly to Chelsea supporters. And tell us a little bit of your memories about the game itself.
Well, I think there was never any love lost between the two sides. I think they were two exceptional sides. They were very, very evenly balanced. I think Leeds had 3 exceptional players in Johnny Giles, Billy Bremner and Eddie Gray.
That's interesting, of course, you say Leeds have 3 exceptional players, because they were very much the team of that time. I remember I think I was about 9 years old at the time, and Leeds were what everyone aspired to be. We were told as youngsters that they had great players in every position, and what they should have won under Don Revie, well, you know, remains to be seen. They never actually fulfilled their promise, I don't think. But Chelsea was certainly the underdogs. But you say Leeds only had 3 exceptional players.
Well, I think that they had a good balance, because they had a back 4 of like Paul Reaney, Jackie Charlton, Norman Hunter and Terry Cooper, that were people that could, or at least 2 of them could look after themselves in, Big Jack and Norman. We had the likes of myself, Webby, Frank Lampard, Ian Wright, Alan Shearer, Alan Shearer, Alan Shearer, and Eddie McCready.
That was an important part of it in them days, being able to look after yourself, I think, a bit, because certainly the game has changed now with the television certainly having its input, and some of the tackling that went on then certainly wouldn't be allowed in today's game.
Well, I think it's a noted thing that one of the Premiership referees a few years ago that sat down and watched the video, and he said that if it had been refereeing today, at least 8 fellas would have been sent off. I think I was the only one would have stayed on. Right?
I'm not sure about that, Ron. But tell us what your thoughts of the game was, because one of my resounding memories was the state of the pitch here at Wembley.
Well, the pitch was a disgrace, to be truthful, because they had a Horse of the Year show a couple of weeks beforehand, and it was just, well, it was when, you know, people talk about Wembley, it's a fantastic playing surface, and it was fantastic. But this afternoon, it was just like the Southend or Western-super-Mare. It was just a quagmire of mud and sand, and to be truthful, I don't think the game should have been played because of the state of the condition.
Well, certainly referee Eric Jennings was given a little bit of stick, or I don't know whether he actually had the authority. The referees do inspect the pitch, and many people thought at the time that he perhaps should have called the game off there and then.
Well, I think that it would have most probably been better to have called the game off and maybe replayed or started again in a few weeks' time when the pitch hopefully would have been a lot better. But as I say, it was an utter disgrace. Having
said that, it didn't ruin the spectacle of the game. A 2-2 draw at Wembley, the excitement, a last-minute equaliser, it was fantastic. I mean, as a kid, I was glued to the television, and I'm sure millions of others were as well. And how did the game actually start? Did Leeds go ahead or did Chelsea go ahead? How did the scoring open?
They scored from a corner. Big Jack come up from one of Eddie Gray's swinging corners, because Big Jack used to just stand on the near post, and you know, Eddie Gray was fantastic at just plucking the balls on his head, and he headed the ball down, and me and Eddie McCready were standing on the touchline. You know, like normally a ball would bounce up. It never bounced at all. It just hit the mud and shot underneath my leg and Eddie McCready's. And then just before half time, Peter Houseman cut in from the left wing and hit a shot from about 25 yards. And normally a goalkeeper would have picked up with his hat. That's how soft it went. And he dived sprayky and it hit a divot and just went underneath him. So that was 1-1 at half time.
What were you told in the dressing room at half-time? What was the mood of the Chelsea players? Because of the fact you was the underdog and it was 1-1 at half-time, was you given a pat on the back, or was you told you need to do a bit more?
No, I think we were a little bit disappointed with our first half performance, and you know, they were by far the better side. You know, Dave Sexton obviously tried to get the lads to raise their game a little bit more, but it never seemed to help because, as I say, we went a goal behind. You know, with about 10 minutes to go, and you know, you think yourself then, well, you know, you're
the 84th minute, I think it was, Mick Jones scored, and surely the lads must have been deflated then and thought, crikey, we've blown the cup final, there can't be long left. Did Chelsea then pour forward in numbers in search of the equaliser, or did you decide to be a little bit more patient? How did the last 6 minutes of that game come about?
Well, obviously with only minutes to go, obviously sides get a little bit desperate. Webber used to go up, play a little bit up front, and to try and cause a bit of havoc. And
what did you throw? Big long balls into the air, hoping for the height. I mean, you had a lot of height in your side.
Oh yeah, we had a few good six
Ian Hutchinson, Peter Osgood. If you threw Dave Webb up there as well, there's a lot of height in that side.
Yeah, it was like a last throw of the dice sort of thing. And then I remember we got a free kick on the left wing. Johnny Hollins curled one in with his right foot, and Ian Hutchinson scored with a diving header in with just a few minutes to go, like to get us a replay. Like, we went into extra time, and you know, it wasn't particularly for half an hour because everybody was so tired because of the conditions. It just petered out into, as I say, a replay, and you know, which I think was a couple of weeks after we went up to Old Trafford.
Yes, which brings us on to the replay. One of the more obvious switches in tactics in that replay was the fact that you, who was playing in a centre-half role in the Wembley game, became a full-back. Was there any reason for that?
Well, I think that as soon as the game finished at Wembley, I remember Dave Dave Sexton sitting beside me and saying, "Look, Ron, what we're going to do is that we're going to swap you and Webby over, me to pick up Eddie Gray." And I think one of my strongest points was, say, like man marking people. And as I say, Webby played alongside John Dempsey in the replay.
Right, Eddie Gray, of course, would trouble many a fullback. How did you actually get on against him in that replay? Do you feel?
Well, I think I'd done all right because I did do a little bit of a Ron Harris tackle that caught him a little bit late and high. I think I was very, very fortunate to. I don't even think I got booked for it, but I think I was very fortunate to stay on the field. But it only happened after about 5 minutes, and the referees were a little bit lenient towards then. And I think he limped for the best part of 80 minutes. So I always say to people, as much as David Webb got the accolades for scoring the winning goal, I think I contributed enough to stop him from playing.
As you would, Ron, as every player I'm sure in Chelsea history has played their part in that particular game. Now, as we go through the game at Old Trafford, it was a night game, of course. Yeah. I think it was the first replay, is that correct?
Yes, first time there'd ever been a replay in a cup tie.
And the excitement was added. How did the game start off? What's your memories there? The crowd was obviously that little bit smaller being at Old Trafford as opposed to
Yes, obviously the pitch was a lot better than what it was at Wembley. I think basically the lads were a little bit disappointed that, obviously we won on the evening, but without being disrespectful to Old Trafford or Manchester United, it did take a little bit of gloss of not winning a cup at Wembley.
The actual walking up the stairs of Wembley and the holding the cup aloft and that, yes, I can understand that.
And I think the same thing happened for long periods. They dominated the game. Leeds, they scored, Mick Jones scored, although I think if Pete Benetti had been properly fit, because he took a bit of a knock prior to that and couldn't take goal kicks and was hobbling around, and I remember Mick Jones putting one past him and we was 1-0 down at half time, and obviously Dave Sexton tried to rally the lads to raise their game, which we never seemed to be able to do. And then Oz scored with a diving.
Why were you actually down at half time? You said, were they the better side? Did they pick up their game from the first?
Yeah, I think they carried on exactly the same way as they did at Wembley, where they were the better side over the two games. But I will say, in defence of our lads, that we come from behind 3 times in those 2 cup ties, and there wasn't many sides done that, so it showed you the character that we had in the side. But it was just difficult for us to get going again until Oz scored a diving header that made it 1-1. We went into extra time, and we seemed to, I think, was the best part of the game over the 2 games that we started to play. And I think that when Leeds had dropped Gary Sprague for the replay, they had the lad in goal, Harvey, and we had a throw in. Ian Hutchinson took the long throw, and of course we used to send
pretty much his trademark here. Yes, he had a great long throw. He could probably throw it to the back post.
Yeah, easy. He could throw a ball from the halfway line over to the crossbar the far side, and it was a big bonus for us every game we played, because we had a few 6-footers that used to go up and put sides under pressure, and Hutch threw this ball. I remember Oz and Jackie Cholton going up to head the ball, and Oz got the flick on. Harvey come out and got caught in no man's land, and I think there was Webby, Terry Cooper and Spun, Tommy Baldwin at the far post, and Webby got the touch.
I remember that there seemed to be a whole load of players all converge on the flick at the far post area. There was a bit of a dispute as to who actually got the final touch.
Webby says that he touched it, but Tommy Baldwin, he always states that he was the last person to get touched. I think the only one that never claimed it was me.
Just on that fact that it was at Old Trafford, Ron, you actually got the medals and the trophy was actually presented on the pitch, is that correct?
Yes, just in front of as you come out the tunnel, the lads were presented with the cup and the medals, and and I remember the first game that finished up a replay, both the sides done a lap of honour round Wembley, and but come the replay, that it's a little bit disappointed that you know, you do a lap of honour round Old Trafford rather than doing it at Wembley.
Yes, it would take the gloss off it a little bit. I mean, the fact you're going around Old Trafford, but I'm sure that was put in its place a little bit by the fact that you were carrying a cup round with you.
Because obviously because we won, it does, you know, make a little compensation. But as I say, I think deep down the lads were disappointed that the replay never or wasn't at Wembley again, even though the pitch was a disgrace.
Tell me about the celebrations afterwards. I mean, these days when teams win cup finals or have success in any competition, there's normally a civic reception or an open-top bus ride or whatever. Did they have that in them days?
Yeah, we after the game went back to the hotel with the chairman and the directors, had a meal, a few drinks, and then it was everyone with themselves out clubbing it. And you know, I remember catching the train from Manchester the next day up to Euston, where we had the old open deck bus.
You caught the train?
Yeah.
What, the team did?
Yes, yeah. Well, you know, we used to travel always in those days, used to travel by train. And as I say, we come back to Euston, you know, around about midday, went from Euston all the way round Chelsea in the open deck bus, and had a reception outside in the Civic Hall by Fulham Broadway Station.
That was more for the fans' benefit,
Yes,
of course.
yeah.
Did many fans stay in Manchester on the night? Can you remember? Did you see many when you was out and about?
Yeah, I see a few. I'm sure, you know, I can't remember the name of the club we was, but somebody looked like Georgie Bess's double, so I'm sure it was him. But no, the lads had a few drinks. We enjoyed ourselves, and it was a good evening.
That first game, you come out of the Wembley tunnel. I know it was. I've said before, it was your second time. What is that feeling actually like when you walk out and there's sets of fans cheering, and what is that feeling? People would love to know.
I think it's, as a youngster, it was every footballer's ambition to play in a cup final at Wembley. And, you know, people that have most probably played there can talk about it, but you've got to have played in a cup final to appreciate the atmosphere and the fantastic day. I remember, you know, we stayed up at Hendon, we had a police escort from the hotel, drive up Wembley Way, and see the hundreds and hundreds of thousands of people walking to the stadium.
That used to be all part of the build-up, I remember, because I mean, the television companies used to have this 10 o'clock. They were competing against each other, all part of the build-up. Ex-players and I think they had quizzes against each other. The two teams involved, the fans got involved, and it was all part of the old FA Cup final build-up.
Yeah. And I remember, as I say, in the hotel, used to have the local barbers used to come round and give the lads a trim up, make sure your hair wasn't out of place. And as I say, I remember by 2:45, used to be the old knock on the door for the two sides to walk up, leading up to the tunnel, and used to have to wait there for everything to be sorted out with a band and that. And it's a fantastic feeling just to walk out. Once you get on, used to go past the dog track onto the pitch, and you know, there's like 100,000 people, and I think it's the best feeling that any professional footballer can get. And if you know, as I say, if you can't raise or look forward to playing in a cup final, then you should never be a professional footballer.
You had the haircuts in that, Ron. Did you have a tailor them days? Because I remember a lot of teams took pride in the fact that they had suits and every tailor was looking to get the work. Did you have suits in them days?
Yes, all the players and the officials had grey suits with the Chelsea CFC on, and you know, we looked quite smart, really.
And of course, the other memory from that particular game was the fact that probably the greatest Chelsea song ever came around at that time. Blue is the colour.
Yeah, I think that was quite a good song, and you know, sometimes you still hear it played, and it brings back some old memories.
Did it make number one?
No, I think it come to number 3 on the charts, and I remember going over to a studio right near Highbury, and the lads was always a little bit slow to start with until the old lager started to flow, and you know, we went on from there like.